Once again, it's a pleasure to be able to share a message from this week's Parashat Yitro. Remember when I was first starting out in the rabbinate and I hadn't yet learned how to handle the stresses of this job, I would come home from work often in a terrible mood. I remember one day early on I came home from work and I was just so upset about stuff that had gone down at my office that day. And I was yelling and screaming, and my son, who was 3 or 4 at the time, turned to me and he said, "Dad, put a sock in it." And it caused me to chuckle and gain some perspective about the world and about my life and about my job, and to really understand the important things. To be able to meet my family with a sefer panim yafot, with a happy, joyful face, was something that's far more important than anything that could go wrong at work that day. And it struck me so deeply because it was a 3 or 4-year-old who was instructing me about the priorities of life. And it meant a lot to me. And this week's Parsha comes on the heels of one of the great defeats, or at least one of the great battles of the Jewish people, and that is the fight that incurred after the ambush of Amalek. It was a horrible moment, a moment that God says to Moses, make sure to always remember this, that there are people out there who hate you, who want to do you harm. And so Moses takes that to heart. It's the first real battle he encounters in the desert. And he is, I imagine, distraught. He comes home very, very upset. And he meets Yitro, his father-in-law. And his father-in-law says, let me remind you who you are and where you're supposed to be. And so Yitro is Moses' father-in-law. And he says you have to take back your wife. And you have to re-identify your children. It says, that one of your children's name is Gershon. He reminds him of one of his sons. And he says, remember what it was like to be a stranger in a strange land? Now remember that you're home. And then he says, V'shemo echad Eliezer, ki Elohei avi v'ezri v'yatzileni micherav paro. And your other son's name is Eliezer because God saved you. And that God will continue to be a part of your life and continue to save you. But for the time being, remember your home. And so Yitro reintroduces Moses to his sons. And he says to him, no matter how bad it gets at work, you can always come home. No matter how difficult the challenges are, no matter how much you have to overcome, you can always come home. You know, sometimes our children come home from school and they're very, very upset about something that happened. Maybe a bully had said something mean to them, or maybe they hadn't done well on a test, or maybe a teacher was overly difficult in their expectations. They come home upset and distressed. And my reaction, my initial reflex is to say, let me go take care of that. Let me tell those children to behave more appropriately. Let me ask those teachers to be a little more kind. And if I ever say that to my children, they always have the same response. No, Dad, leave it alone. Don't do anything. My understanding from that is that they want to be able to handle their own struggles, their own challenges themselves without the interference of their father, even though that's my gut instinct. But the best thing that I can ever say to them is, I know how difficult it was for you at school today, but don't worry, you're home. And when you're home, you're safe, and the outside world can't harm you. Tomorrow, I recognize you'll go back with the strength that you received here at home, energized once again with the rest you were able to find here in your own bed, and be able to handle those challenges. But for the time being, you're home. And that is the message that Yitro is sending to Moses all throughout this Parsha, and that is, no matter the challenges that exist, you'll find a solution. I'll help you find the right solution to those problems. But for the time being, you're home. And that's a wonderful place to be.